Right now, we've got a small mini episode we wanted to do just to hop into your feed and talk about something. So here's the episode.
We keep inventing all of these new phrases: quiet quitting, quiet cracking, like they're these mysterious shifts in employee behavior. They're not. They're the language of system failure. And this is the part we don't want to think about. This is the result of trust that has already been broken. And we all know that recovering trust is 10 times harder than building it in the first place.
And if burnout is framed as people just cracking, we've already missed the
Oh,
point.
yeah.
These names, quiet quitting, quiet cracking, they sound clever, but they put the blame on the employees. Why don't we have catchy names for toxic leaders, for managers who quietly erode trust? So, Nicole, you said that naming symptom instead of an illness is a disservice. What do we lose when we mislabel the problem?
When we misname the problem, we lose the truth. We create a language that hides what's actually happening. Quiet quitting sounds like people being lazy, but people were pulling back after their loyalty stopped paying off. Quiet cracking makes it sound like employees are just too fragile, little snowflakes. But the truth is that our systems have stripped out the buffers that protected them. And this is the cost. Every time we misname the problem, we reinforce a narrative where employees can't be trusted, when in reality, it's the system that broke the trust. And the longer we lean on the wrong story, the harder that trust is to rebuild, and the longer we keep working in the wrong direction to fix the problem.
Exactly that. It's this corporate speak. It does the same thing that we keep doing over and over and just going, I don't know why this person is being burned out or melting down. They're clearly damaged. That's easy for people in leadership to do. It just removes all the responsibility
Yeah.
off of them and goes, well, it's their problem.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have all of these organizations that have been designed for maximum efficiency, but they don't leave any margin for humanity. And this isn't a one-off. This is not a moment in time. We're operating in this environment where people already know that they can't trust these organizations. They've seen benefits slashed, they've seen their workload spike, they've seen leaders say one thing and do another, and it's exponentially harder to fix than it was building it in the first place. Brant, you've called burnout a leadership failure. Full stop. What's the difference between an individual who's stressed and a system that's failing them?
Yeah. So these things don't happen in a vacuum. And if you've got someone who is unable to report to work, burned out from the environment that you're in charge of as a leader, then you can't say that that's a failure on the person. Sure, people go through tough things. They have things that are outside of work that are difficult. But what we're talking about is burnout from the job, from the way that you structure them in your team. And I keep going back to my experiences in wilderness leadership. This would be like if they were on my climb and one of my anchor points came out and they fell and I went, oh shit.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have trusted that anchor point I put there, because ultimately in a work environment, people are expecting the leadership and the leaders to provide a safe place for them to be. And we have this epidemic of people burning out and disengaging, where we call it quiet quitting or we call it quiet cracking. And really, if everybody has stopped talking, if everybody is quietly breaking down, that's not just like a collective thing that we've decided to do as employees. That's something that says something very deep about the leadership problems and the leadership failure in any organization. If you've got 3 people that have all burned out or on PTO or doing these things where they have to take long periods of time off, and you're not reflecting on where you fall into the equation, you're not doing what you need to do as a leader. And it may not be you personally, but just look at the system.
I absolutely I've told you this privately too, but I love these outdoor analogies because we have expectations. If you go on an outdoor expedition, say you're rafting, I did a whitewater rafting trip a couple of years ago, and it was terrifying. They gave us a big spiel about all the ways we could die. And at no point was I worried that they hadn't bothered to check and make sure the raft was inflated, right? And that's what
Right.
we're doing in these organizations. And then when people are broken by the unsafe situation, we're like, oh, wow. Yeah, that person, man, they're just really weak. And
Right. And when you went on a rafting trip, I'm assuming they provided the PFDs or the
Yep.
life jackets for you,
Mhm.
correct? They didn't go, well, oh, you didn't bring your life jacket, you didn't bring your PFD. I'm sorry. You fell out of the boat and you drowned. They don't go, oh well, they're quiet
That's
drowning over
right.
there. This whole like broken system that we have where we can go, they're over there getting sucked into a rapid and that yeah, they fell out, but like it's not my fault. Talking about leadership from the way I was trained, what is leadership? And then what is actually happening in most workplaces where we get someone who moves into a management role because they were a good employee and then we give them no training. So it's not necessarily their fault because we didn't train the raft guides. The worst places that you'll go rafting will give their guides at least a week's worth of training. The best places will hire people that know what they're doing. One of the best places I worked, there was a month's worth of training before we even saw clients in the
And
outdoors.
there was a month's worth of training, and the training was based on reality. So they didn't train you for mountain climbing and then put you in charge of rafting, right? That's
Right.
what we do in organizations. We set leaders up. We give them all of this self-awareness training and all of this training on emotional skills and soft skills. And we tell them, go out and take care of your people. And then we put them in environments that punish them for caring for their people. And they're just torn in half. I mean, it's absolutely brutal to witness. That's how I ended up doing this work. I started out wanting to do leadership development. And when I realized that I was training people for an environment that not only wasn't true, but that was going to break them, I was like, I can't do this. I have to fix the system so that when we're training leaders, we're telling them the truth.
In these systems, we hire for people who are going to get themselves to the top of the mountain, get the organization to the top of the mountain, plant that flag on there. And in reality, it's not being a good lead. If there's lightning and it's dangerous, you don't push your team ahead. You go, well, they're the most important thing here. I'm going to go back down and we'll try again later. Because being a successful leader is about getting everybody home. It's not about getting to the top of the mountain. That's secondary. Organizations are better served by having that mentality because you ultimately keep people and you keep loyalty. They don't quietly break down and quietly stop working as effectively when you lead them that way. Yeah, you're not always going to get to the top of the mountain, but you're also not going to break people. That's better for business as well. I'll make the business case for it too.
We talk about shareholders, right? I mean, like that's the elephant in the room is the publicly traded companies. How often we feel like they can't take care of their employees because they have to answer to the almighty shareholder. And it's almost like our shareholders are invested in a single expedition, whereas we as a company are invested in our overall reputation. And so we don't want to force everyone to the top of the mountain where half of our people die because
Hmm.
long term, that's bad for the company. It's
Right.
that long term focus. And that's where the trust has really cracked. We used to have that feeling that if, okay, yeah, maybe today the organization can't gamble on me. And so I'm going to do some extra work. I'm going to show how much I care. I'm going to invest part of myself today with the promise that tomorrow that will get paid back. And then we all learned that that in fact is not the truth anymore. And so when that side of the deal got broken by employers and they only started caring about single expeditions instead of the long-term health of our company, we're like, well, if you don't care about the long term, why should I care about the long term?
If the expedition is to just get the leader to the top of the mountain, people are going to not put as much effort into that climb. You're going to have a better, more willing entire expedition when people feel like the leadership is not afraid to turn back if it's dangerous for them. These terms, the quiet cracking and the quiet quitting, they're a symptom of our expedition to the top of that mountain every time, no matter what. If it's dangerous, it doesn't matter. When you as leadership are focused on external metrics, there's so many other things that can push the people to the back. Even though a lot of leadership says we do all these things and we care about these things, it's the actions. I think it's really interesting that these two things are both called quiet. When you really think about it, when you have employees that go silent, for any leader, that should be a red flag.
The quiet happens after the noise. Most of these people don't go quietly into the night. They start out
Yeah.
talking, they start out giving feedback because they care. When your people who care are suddenly quiet, that is the biggest five-alarm fire there is, because they told you what was wrong and you didn't listen and you didn't fix it. And so now they're like, okay, what's the point?
Yeah, these terms make it sound like people are applying for jobs because they just want to sit there and not do anything. They're applying for a job and then they just somehow fell over and broke. It's so ridiculous that if someone is actively having a breakdown and they're quiet about it, or they're quietly disengaging, we can't not call that a failure of leadership. And I think that that's where being curious as a leader is so important. Just coming in and going, what is going on here? We rely on things like employee evaluations and just sort of set that as our metric for what is good workplace culture. And if you've got people who are quietly quitting and quietly burned out, what makes you think those quiet people are going to share with you on your survey?
I have a pretty hefty, like, behind the curtain perspective on employee surveys. I've done a lot of research on the
Yeah.
providers of those systems, and I've done that job. And I can tell you that actually, as a leader, one of the things that is the greatest gift is when you look at your team and they have told you what's wrong because they trust you to receive it. If you are getting no comments, that's a big red flag. If you're getting either just across the board positive scores and no negative, they're afraid of you. The thing that I think is the biggest gift is when you get a high score and you get negative feedback, because it's like, we're doing great and I trust you to make it better. And leaders don't realize how amazing some of those pieces of feedback are. I want to end with a different metaphor. You mentioned the anchor points and, like, if you didn't put them in correctly, people falling. So I'm going to land
Mhm.
with an even more ridiculous one. I just switched offices, Ryan. So now I've got all of these Lego to, I mean, I always had the Lego, but now I've
Oh,
got
wow.
more. Okay. So imagine I, Nicole, am the leader and I have built my workplace. It is all of these shelves. Now imagine I walk in tomorrow morning and there is a pile of shattered Legos all over the floor, and the shelves are on the ground. Do I blame the Lego for cracking? Probably not quietly. Or do I blame the shelves that were supposed to support them?
I love that. If you got systems that are dropping people, that are cracking them, and you just blame them, I just don't understand this.
Yeah, well, this is my tagline: is your systems and your processes are how you keep your promises. And you promised people growth and development and a vibrant environment and a collegial set of coworkers and all of these wonderful things that they write in all of these rainbow unicorn job descriptions. And then you get there and you're doing repetitive, boring work with people who aren't allowed to talk to you. And you're told that, yeah, there's development, but you're not allowed to be promoted for the first 2 years. I mean, the systems and processes that are in place are breaking every single one of those promises.
That's it for our little mini episode on quiet cracking and quiet quitting.
If you have any thoughts or any comments, go ahead and drop them in to either the show itself or send us messages on LinkedIn. We are all ludicrously active there. We also hope that you've had a moment to think about who the people who are named in these words are. What does corporate jargon hide and what does it expose?